Hello, welcome to our talk today, this last session of MCN. We're so glad you're here with us.
Yeah.
My name is Becca Schreckengast. I'm Director of Exhibitions at Carnegie Museum of Natural History, and these are my creative colleagues, David Lerman from Guy2Go and Robin Owen White from Media Combo. So our talk today is We Are Nature, How a Physical Exhibition Became a Virtual Experience. So I want to tell you some about We Are Nature. We Are Nature was open in 2017 to 2018 for about a year. It was sort of a flagship exhibition for us. The Carnegie Museum of Natural History is sort of changing the way that we were approaching interpreting natural history and human history, from one that was sort of very separate to one that's more interconnected. And we had this gallery that's funded in a certain way that we have funds to turn over exhibitions. So we knew that this exhibition could only be open for 1 year. And what we were trying to do is invite visitors in, give them resources about the evidence of environmental change, but at the same time motivate them and empower them in their experience of that content. This exhibition was about 2 weeks away from coming down, and David was on site. We were working on an augmented reality project together, and we were walking through We Are Nature, and I was lamenting about, it stinks when exhibitions are temporary, because we put a lot of effort into it, and it was testing very well with visitors. We'd got our educational programs kind of honed. We were like cruising. And he said, I have a colleague that could probably scan this for us. I don't know what we'll do with it, but we could scan it. And it seemed like a great idea. We didn't know exactly how we would apply that. So we managed to get the contract scope change together in time to invite Robin and her group to come to the museum and scan the exhibition 2 days before we took it down. So this is just a film. This is a film. We used a lot of the assets that we created for the exhibition, because we already had labels and content and everything. But we had to create some new pieces so that it had the right context in a virtual environment. And this is just to give you a sense of sort of the content of the show, something that Media Combo produced for us. Oh, is the sound on? Yeah, sound's not on. Thanks for your patience.
It's so ironic.
Welcome to We Are Nature, Living in the Anthropocene, an exhibition at the Carnegie Museum of Natural History in Pittsburgh. What the heck is the Anthropocene? The Anthropocene is a newly proposed epoch, or geological time period, defined by humans' effects on the environment. What makes the Anthropocene especially powerful is not only the amount of change, but the condensed period of time in which these changes are taking place. Changes that normally take thousands or even millions of years to manifest are now happening in centuries. We're not separate from nature. We are nature, and our decisions affect all life on Earth. Welcome to the Anthropocene.
Thanks for driving.
Sorry.
So this is a web version. We created 2 versions of this virtual experience. The first is a web-accessible version, which we weren't sure we were going to make when we scanned it, and then also a VR, entirely immersive experience in the Oculus. So there's a couple different ways you can start the experience. Yeah. One is to freely explore the gallery space and to see the exhibits in detail, and the other is to open a guided tour. And that guided tour, we used some. It's okay.
Sorry, just
Go back.
okay.
It'll play. It doesn't need sound. So.
Yeah, let's go back here.
So let me rewind a little bit. So there's a couple different ways you can enter the exhibition if you're in the free explore mode. The guided tour had sort of an audio companion, so if you aren't able to see the exhibition, there was sort of an accessible audio companion to the show. So we can put it on our website at the museum. But here is the map version where you're sort of seeing the major theme areas of the exhibition. And we also had a list, so where you can sort of see photographs and eye-level views. So different ways to get into the content and decide where you want to navigate to. So it's a little faster than it was. So what happens is when you select where you're going to go, it's a little slower than that. You kind of zoom in and you land. And audio clip, essentially we hired a voice actor to read all the labels and record them. And then, so that started that area, so you could hear it, but you're still able to free explore. So you're not stuck looking at something at this point, but you're hearing it. So we wanted to do that with sort of an audio asset as part of the experience. So we have lots of assets. We have specimens, we had labels. So we were able to sort of lay these in and make them available. And they sort of exist in three-dimensional space. We also had a lot of media in the exhibition, and the scope of our contract is pretty limited. It wasn't a very expensive project. We knew we wanted to, there were some media experiences that were tested really positively and had a bigger impact, so we thought we would recreate those as interactives in the virtual space. And the other ones, we already had the assets, so we video recorded and laid in video in those places. So you can see that here.
This interactive explored Pittsburgh and the surrounding area. The Alcohol House, a 3-story building built in 1907.
There's a way to interpret things we had. But here's an interactive piece about how you feel about anthropogenic change. And here,
In the bin that reflected their answer. Yes, no, or not sure.
and it allows you to do kind of a polling activity in the experience itself. So this is the Oculus version of the same experience. It's much more immersive. We were able to use the same assets for this. But it's just a little more dramatic than the web version of it. Okay. Yeah. So why did we do it? What was the purpose of the work? Well, first, we wanted to honor what we had created, because exhibits are so complex to make. A lot of passion goes into it, research, design, and physical production. We felt that even though the exhibition was able to be open only 1 year, that the VR is available for as long as we want, so we can extend the life of that moment. Low environmental impact was a pillar of the physical exhibition design. We reused just about everything we had in there. But even then, we painted a bunch of palettes black and used old risers and painted everything. Most of that exhibition went into the trash or back into storage cabinets. So when this was closed, even though it itself was not sustained, the VR is living on. So from a sustainability standpoint, it works. And one of the things that I'm finding is very useful is that it's available for reference now. So it's an archive. When you take exhibitions down, the specimens all go in there, cubbies and holes. You're label copy gets filed away on the server, and it never comes together again. It can never be whole. It only remains in your memory. And this is a way for it to be archived in its wholeness. And the other, idea is that we're extending beyond the walls of the museum, because the building, as a problems space to think about, it has limited reach. We want to share our story fluidly through like email, something easy, or through the Oculus app, so we're able to connect. Visitors and colleagues all over the world are given like a portal to our physical space, but to our ideas. So access is big. And because we had developed so much educational programming around the We Are Nature exhibition, and we're still using it in sort of our school interactions, this was something we could use to bridge sort of the experience that our school groups and education teams were having at the museum to pre and post visit. And now David and Robin can talk some about that how of what we do.
Yeah. So just put it on the next slide. So now we're going to take you through the production flow. So the first thing that we had to do was to capture. The first thing we had to do was to capture the experience, and we knew when we started, as Becca said, that we wanted to have both a. Well, I knew anyway that we wanted to have both a virtual, a headset experience and also a web-based experience. And we also figured out that we would want to be able to give people the opportunity to explore all the way through on their own, and also maybe just give them a highlights tour as well. And so that was, sort of how we structured the way we were going to work. So the first thing we did was to organize the scanning and photogrammetry of the exhibition space, which was about 7,000 square feet. And it was pretty good. It took about 4 hours for us to capture the space. We used a device that allowed us to create 2D high-res 360 panoramic photos, which were ultimately stitched together to create the environment through which people can move. And basically the way they move is pretty much the way that you move through Google Street View, basically jumping from point to point, which works both on the web and also in the headset. And every time you stop, you can look around full 360 degrees. There's something to see, so it really is an immersive experience, and it works in a headset. And at every stop, there's either audio and or video and or labels. There's always some sort of, and occasionally some interactive things. So there's always something to help you have a better understanding of what you're looking at in a way. Because I think especially with natural history exhibits, when you're confronted with a stuffed wolf, you want to know why you're looking at that wolf. So we knew right from the start that interpretation was going to be, an important component of it. But as Becca mentioned, this wasn't a big budget project, and we knew from the beginning that rather than write a whole script to guide people through, we were going to work with the labels that existed. And so that's what we did, because it's just easier to listen to something than it is to read something and be looking at something at the same time. And because especially in VR, audio is a really good way to direct people's attention. Although we didn't actually shoot or document or produce any ambisonic sound for this. But anyway, as you saw a little bit earlier in the little movie, when you arrive at a location, if you see the audio icon, you can tap on it either with the controller or on your screen, and it plays. And all the labels, the label copy was adapted slightly for voice recording, because you tend to speak differently than you read. But they're all very short and pretty much to the point. And one of the things that we did was, rather than just simply recording a voice speaking these things, we did try to animate that experience a little bit by adding room tone and sound effects. So, room tone is very subtle and just makes you kind of feel like you're in a space a little bit, which was an important thing for this. And the idea adding the sound effects, we added to go along with the pictures and the things that the images and the things that the narrator was talking about. So we added the sound of rain or the sound of birds, and sometimes we added the sound of man-made sources like traffic or heavy machinery being operated, just to emphasize the significance of the message, to create and by creating a more sort of sensory experience. The one thing we didn't plan on was the experience that people would have when they first got to the opening of the exhibition. When you walk into a physical space, an exhibition, there's introductory text. Most people have no problem reading it and find it useful to help them frame, whatever they're about to see. But in this experience, it's really, not positive to be just staring at a wall trying to read text. So we thought, since the introductory text is really important for people to sort of understand why they're in this space and what they hope to understand and get out of it, we just did something really simple, which was to record the text of the introductory label and throw pictures up at it, essentially, to create that little introductory video that you saw, so that it just helps people visualize what the words are, and they don't have to be reading the words. It was a better introductory experience. We just understood that if they were going to skip the introduction, they would just really miss the point of what they were doing, because it's sort of the connecting tissue for everything that you see after that. So, we met. We definitely were able to meet the goals that you set out, and when this will be, as a headset version, will be available on the Oculus Go store in about 3 weeks. But meanwhile, right now it's available on the web, and so it serves multiple audiences and multiple purposes. And because we're running a little bit out of time, I'm just going to hand it over to David.
So I'm gonna. Thank you. Hi. I'm gonna go quick on the how we built it based on the capturing and creation that Media Combo did. So once we had all the, so what Media Combo gave us is a 3D model that you can see on the left. So it's a real 3D model photogrammetry, but it's not a high-res photogrammetry model, because it would be too heavy to handle in Unity or in WebGL or VR. So it's a combination, and that's the magic of it. It's a combination of a real 3D model and 150 panorama. And you may see on the right all those bubbles you can see. So it's Unity, and so the 150 panorama were recentered inside Unity, so inside the 3D model. And you can also see a small camera on the bottom right screen with a label. And so that's how we position the content inside the 3D model. So you have the best of the two worlds. You have a 3D model, so we can make it interactive as much as we want, but you have high-res panorama. So it's when you are inside the Oculus version or the web version, you can read the label. That's why we didn't have to put a magnifier on every label, because you could read the actual label of the exhibition, which you couldn't do in photogrammetry, pure photogrammetry. Then the third point was how you move in an exhibition. So, okay, we all know about Street View, so we kind of copy what worked pretty well. So we went into that with Becca's example of the video. So you had three options to move. One is teleportation, so you see the exhibition from above, you click, and you are teleported in a part of the exhibition. Second one was a list, and the third one was you can move with your fishing rod controller, whatever you call it, from one point to another. So actually from one center of a panorama to another center of a panorama. You can't move a meter away or feet away. You have to jump from one center to the other center. But because there were so many panorama, you feel like you walk, actually. We only had to fine-tune the pace and the acceleration, because if it's too fast, you can get motion sickness inside the VR headset. So I think it's not too slow, because so you can believe you move, and not too fast so you get sick. 4 point, how we display information. So we wanted the information to be visible, but not too visible, because otherwise it would get into the way of the experience. So some hotspots were needed when it was not needed, as I was saying, no magnifier. So 3 kind of content: text, video, as you have seen, and the audio content. Audio, at the beginning, we had this big audio player, and it was really in your face. And at some point, it was like, we don't need a fast forward or a play pause. We just need a play stop, because the content was short enough. Yeah. So we simplified the controller, so it's really subtle and not obvious, permanent. And last part, the interaction. So because we have the 3D model, it's basically we can do anything we want, any kind of interaction, like in a video game, So that's, I think, the key takeaway of this project is what you have seen here is just the beginning. If tomorrow Becca's team wants to do another room, but a totally virtual room, we can add it to the model. If we want to do a quiz, we can do it. But we have the foundation to build anything we want based on reality and digital experience. So what we did as a start is this simple experience with visitors, so they could choose what emotion was inspired by the exhibition, and we would randomly show them 3 post-it that were actually written during the exhibition. So it was kind of a part of digital but real, with the handwritten notes. That was pretty cool. And the poll, so normally in the actual exhibition it was like cork, right? Yeah. They would put, so you could see, you wouldn't have the exact figure, but you could have a sense of who answered what. So here in VR we reproduced it with the actual digital poll. That's pretty it, I think. We have 5 minutes for any questions.
Yeah. Do you have a microphone?
So right now you're using it kind of as a way, it seems like, of preserving an exhibit that has already happened in the future. Do you foresee creating that to exist like concurrently with an exhibit so that people in the physical exhibit can see how digital users are interacting with it?
For this exhibit, we're sharing it around a lot in email. I mean, that's probably the most fluid way it's making its way currently. But we do think about a sort of a long-term play of this. Like I was just talking to some other colleagues about connecting this exhibition to other exhibitions on the Anthropocene. I mean, you could really create a virtual museum of the Anthropocene by scanning and creating these experiences. But I don't think I answered your question.
In future exhibits, have you thought about doing this again, but like at the same time?
Yeah, I think that one of the things we learned from this is like having it be so end-loaded really made us just have to think and do really quickly. I think that if we had started it and had been part of our planning process, we would have thought more about the story and how we might have composed that story in a specific way for this platform. But from my perspective, if we're creating these things, these physical things, and you can go in and scan it in 4 hours and have that, information, it seems silly to do any type of temporary show that goes in the bin. I mean, they really do go in the bin. Is a way for us to access that. And the technology is, at this point, pretty good to get high-res imagery. Well, some of the things we learned about scanning it is, lighting is tricky.
Yeah.
So maybe doing it several times, like our lighting's like blasted. And we couldn't, really change that or turn that down in the model. So if we had spent more time with it, we would have maybe made things a little more dramatic and jewel-like. Also, like our ceiling is just as detailed as everything else in the show, so we may have toned down some of those things, like you would in a 3D virtual model that you're creating to preview what the exhibition would look like. But for us, I think, just exhibitions are expensive to make. One, they're very time-consuming to make. So if you're budgeting, add in, I don't know, 2% of the cost, less than that, to scan it. And if and nothing else, it's an accessible archive of the show. So if somebody comes in and goes, oh yeah, I love Monet, I love it, and I want you to do another exhibition on Monet, I don't know, I'll give you $1 million. You can share from a fundraising perspective, able to share your entire catalog of things, not just what's open at the museum at any given time. And they're together in their entirety. So that's exciting. Does anybody else have a question? Yes.
So nice.
I have a question for you're mentioning keeping this as an archival thing and what that archival preservation looks like for this VR.
Yeah. I think it's TBD. Right now, online, it could have a long life sitting there. The Oculus Go, it's, I think that technology will probably age and change faster.
But the programming language, which is Unity, and sometimes people are using Unreal. That is the basis for all sort of virtual reality projects, and it's going to be around, for quite a while. Obviously, software evolves like everything else, but it's really hard to predict how long it will last. But as a method for providing the experience of what it was like to be in that exhibition, even if all you do is 360 spatial captures and then stitch them together so that you have an immersive experience, it's much more compelling than looking at a bunch of stills or even reading a catalog. So it really gives you a better sense of what it was like to be in the exhibition without taking all those assets, putting all of them into Unity and doing CGI and totally recreating this fantastic, doing all the things that you could do to really make you feel like you're in the actual museum galleries. You don't really need to go that far to still have a pretty good experience, especially if you include, the label if you include the interpretation. I think audio and video really, and interactivity help a lot. You need interpretation for, if you don't want to walk people through the exhibition yourself, then you need to have some sort of interpretation for it.
Any other questions?
So have you guys done projects like this before? And if you have, were there any things you encountered in this one that were like unexpected challenges?
This was the first one that we did, and I think we learned quite a few things. We tried to learn on the fly and improve what we could, within the time frame that we had. And some things have to do with budget and sort of depend on how much time and effort you want to put into it. But usually that takes advanced planning, I would say. So instead of waiting until the exhibition is about to come down, say, okay, we're having this exhibition come up whenever it is, and as Becca was suggesting, build into the budget the kind of thing that you want to do.
I think so. We do a lot of AR projects, so it's based on Unity each time. So I think the tricky part here was to optimize all the content so it loads quickly when you walk. You don't have to wait, because there is a lot of, there is 150 panorama plus this big 3D model, so it has to be smooth. So that was the main challenge. Other than that, it's a pretty simple VR project. You have, once everything is set up, you have to install the right markers to get the content. A little bit of UI work too, but even though the experience is not super complex, so it was really easy.
Yeah.
So mainly optimization and adjustment.
And the VR is here if anybody wants to see it. Check it out.
And it'll be on Oculus
In a couple weeks.
In a couple weeks.
Yeah. And the Go it's a $200 headset, so as headsets go, it's not expensive.
Anything else?
Well, thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for coming.